G'day everybody and welcome to the House of Mario, the South Australian Nintendo podcast that is backed by a 120 Power Star rating. I'm your host Drew Agnew and the doors to episode 258 are open. I hope you're going well. I hope you had a fantastic holiday and a great start to 2024. And for me, I'm just so excited, so keen to be back in the podcast chair, to be talking into the microphone once again. And this episode has been about a year in the making. This is where I'm going to be talking about my favorite games of 2023. And this largely come from a New Year's resolution I had early in 2023, or maybe at the end of 2022. Would have been at the end of 2022. You know, that's when you start thinking about your resolutions. You put them in place at the start of the year. That makes sense. But 2022 for me was a year where my firstborn son came into the world, massive changes in my own life, and just getting used to how things worked and, time for hobbies and gaming and podcasts, all of that, just got changed around so much. Priorities changed, all of that. But at the end of reflecting on that year of 2022, I thought to myself, man, I really didn't play many games, especially when the PlayStation Wrapped came in, the Nintendo sort of summary of your year comes in. And I looked at my PlayStation, I'm like, I barely touched my PlayStation in 2 years, the 2 years after after it came out, 2021, 2022, barely played any games on PS5. And, my Switch, that's always the console that's literally right there. I can pick it up, power it on, takes no time at all. But I'm like, man, I could even play more games. I need to play more games on my primary platform, the platform that I cover. And it's one of those things that I really reflected on. And hearing other podcasts have their conversations about Game of the Year back then, I thought, man, I need to better myself. So at the end of 2023, I've got an established sort of list I can go through. I can actually have a good discussion about some games. And while that's great for content, we're going to sit down and talk about that today and have some fun with it. Just for me personally, it's been an absolutely fantastic year for gaming. And that has made me enjoy it all that much more. And it's an interesting year to, focus on the backlog, focus on playing more games, because it was a year where you could not keep up with video game releases if you did not work in the gaming industry. If you had a job somewhere else, if you had, responsibilities elsewhere, you could not keep up with all the games you want to play. And that was definitely the case for me. I think some of my favorite games this year that would have been at the top of the list just unfortunately did not get played by me. And there was a particular sort of few months stretch that I have mentioned on the show before, but I don't expect everybody to listen to everything I say, of course. But there was a section of the year from, I think when I finished Tears of the Kingdom to probably for 3 months where it was winter here. So there was a bit of wintertime depression in some ways, just not feeling in the mood for experiences that I've got to sort of kickstart myself. I was watching a lot of movies and TV shows, just a little bit easier, sort of mentally and all of that. So there was a section of the year where I actually did not play much. And I think next year when I make, this year when I make New Year's resolutions, that's definitely something I'll look at and tackle. But for the most part, my New Year's resolution for 2023 was finish more games, finish 2 games a month for a total of 24 games. So, a game a fortnight, that's pretty doable. Just make some time, sort of maybe on the weekends and a couple of hours each night, when it's time for bed. But I really did take that sort of New Year's resolution to heart, and I absolutely smashed it. So by the time, say, Tears of the Kingdom came out, I had pretty much already completed 24 games, both from, the retro catalog of games I already have, as well as Game Pass games, and a bunch of stuff coming out. And I really did sort of fall in love with a lot of indie games that are 2 hours long to 4 hours long. That is typically a really great sweet spot for somebody like me who's got a young child and maybe doesn't have the energy for a massive sort of experience learning new mechanics, a fair bit throughout the the adventure and sort of jump between different narrative experiences throughout the year. So a lot of them from Game Pass, which I've talked about on the podcast quite a bit, are there, as well as just obviously games on Switch, because all of those games that I did play on Game Pass are Switch games, or at least coming to Switch later this year, which I'll be betting the drum on once it gets a Switch release. But absolutely awesome year. And I ended up beating 42 games. And there was a part in the year where I sort of reevaluated and I was trying to tackle the 50 game threshold, trying to beat 50 games. But my time off in the year and also like the last few months with sharing and that, I couldn't play as many games as I would have liked. So we got to 42, but I'm kind of happy about that in some ways, because it leaves room for improvement for this year, where my New Year's resolution for gaming at least is to complete 50 games. So, for the most part, got to beat like a small game a week while also having like a bigger game on the rotation, making sure I'm chipping through that, but also, picking up some interesting sort of titles that won't take longer than a week for me to beat. But this list that I've accumulated throughout the year, I had a lot of fun doing it. Actually, this was a massive motivation for me actually completing games this year. And I had a list on GG, which is an app you can download on your phone. And it's an absolutely fantastic app. You can make lists. You can sort of keep track of your backlog. You can make like wish lists for games that you want. It's just like a great way to organize your gaming collection. So just shout out to the GG app. Definitely go and give it a look if you're interested in sort of monitoring and seeing other people's reviews. And, I follow like a few of my friends on there too. So it's interesting to see like when they beat games and they leave reviews for their titles as well. But for me making this list, it was a lot of fun. It was actually, like I said, a massive motivation for actually beating the games that I actually played last year. And how I did it is as I beat a game, I put it into the list, I ranked it. And where I ranked it as I beat it is where it stays. So the only way I can move games up and down the list is put something behind it or put something above it. And it's interesting because that sort of makes a list of games that, well, I guess they're ranked how I felt at the time of completing them, not how I felt a day after, a week later. And it wasn't me at the end of the year putting together a list from like games I can barely remember at the start of the year to a game that I just finished and I can remember it really well because I literally touched it within the week. So this is a list that I've put together. Can't change anything. And there were a couple of games where I'm like, man, that stuck with me way more than, say, this other game stuck with me, even though I might have liked it more at the end of when I actually beat it. But I can't move it. It's stuck in stone and it's there for good. So, like I said, 42 games that I've beaten throughout the year, ranked from my least favorite to my favorite. And keen to just go through them and talk about my experiences throughout the year of playing games in 2023. So the game at the bottom of the list at 42 is Dead Space. Dead Space remake by EA Motive. And Dead Space is a game that I've been wanting to check out for a long time, been hearing great things about. And since it got a remake, it was just like perfect opportunity to dive into it with just amazing visuals. Sound design is just phenomenal. And really try a genre that I don't play that much. I don't gravitate towards horror games or survival horror games or anything like that. Not really my cup of tea. I'm a Nintendo podcaster. I'm a Nintendo player. I like, light, colorful experiences that make me feel good in my spare time. I don't need to feel scared or anything like that because I'm not even like a horror movie guy. Like, honestly, I'm not exposed to it necessarily. It's not because like I got anything against it. It's just like, my family and that never been like horror connoisseurs or anything like that. So Dead Space was just great to sort of see what it's all about. I've been hearing great things about it. It's a classic from 2008 or 2009, whenever it came out originally. I wouldn't even have had a PlayStation or Xbox then. I think I got my 360 in 2010, and I just was not a game that I looked at all. But playing the remake, really enjoyed the start of it. So, getting into it, sort of going through the corridors, the sound design is just phenomenal. Sends shivers down your spine when you hear something or something scattering or scurrying through the vents. And I really enjoyed my first like 4 hours with the game. It was absolutely awesome. And the way the story was setting up was pretty intriguing as well. Isaac Clarke being, dragged into the Ishimura. Something has gone down. Your crewmate are turning into these necromorphs, which are these just hideous alien creatures. And the gameplay revolves largely around you sort of, you can't kill them just by shooting them in the head like a typical, I guess, like third-person shooter. You've got to cut off their limbs so they can't get to you. And then you stomp their head in when they come to you. But for me, especially, like the game started to drag on, where it was like, oh look, you got to get to this certain location on the Ishimura to proceed and be able to fix the Ishimura to eventually get off of it. That's what you're largely trying to do. And you go in here, then the radio, someone on the radio basically telling you where to go. Like, oh, you got to go here and do this. You got to go here and do this. You got to go here and do this. And I think the game for me, even though it's a short game, it's about a 12-hour game, maybe 13 hours, 14 hours, depending on where you get stuck. But for me, it just dragged on. Like, a week of just like, oh, you got to go here and do this. Oh, you got to go here and do this. Oh, you got to go here and do this. Like, I was like, all right, I've had enough. And it was to the point where I fell off of it, and I came back months later, like 7 months later, to finish the game because I wanted to beat it. It wasn't just a game I wanted to spend $100 on and play a few hours of it and just have it sit there, even though I didn't enjoy it. So when I came back to it, I played it with like headphones, and when there was a section where I was playing like a scarier segment, I put on some like aerobics music, so upbeat aerobics music, and I was playing that while I was slicing and dicing. And when it went back to story, I paused the music, and I continued on that way. But finishing the game, the story, the payoff or the twist or whatever, I was like, yeah, was that a twist? Was that not known? So yeah, it wasn't really a payoff for me either. I got to be honest, I really didn't enjoy the game all that much. If it was a shorter experience, I think a shorter horror experience is way more up my alley. Just like, sit down for a night, 4 or 5 hours, perfect. But even though it's a short game, it still outlived its welcome for me. So at the bottom of the list was Dead Space Remake. At 41 was Super Mario Advance. So this is Mario Brothers 2, but the Mario Advance version. And I think this is the first time I played Mario Brothers 2, in all honesty. Not first time ever literally touching the controls, but first time playing through the game. And I played through on Nintendo Switch Online through the expansion pack service with Game Boy Advance. And I was actually quite happy when these games were coming to the service. And at the time, everybody was sort of shrugging their shoulders, being like, why is this coming to Switch Online? We've already got the originals Mario Brothers 2 on the NES. And I was stoked to play it. But playing through it, it definitely is like one of the worst Mario games. And I've got no nostalgia for it. I do have nostalgia for Mario Brothers and Mario Brothers 3 and World, but not that much for 2. And to me, it definitely stands out. There's just like a lot of repetition in it, doing the keys. The gameplay feels honestly nowhere as good as like the first Mario Brothers. I think the first Mario Brothers holds up so well. It's just so iconic, the way it looks, the sounds, the music, and I still think it plays beautifully. That's why that game is such a cult classic. Well, not a cult classic. It's just a just a classic. But Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario Advance, didn't really enjoy it. I didn't really feel, and I think that took like a week to get through as well. Picking up the Switch, chipping through it here and there. But definitely a game that I didn't really enjoy all that much. But it was cool to see like the origins of Birdo and Wart. But in also saying that, like I hear a lot of like fans of Wart from Mario Bros 2, and I do not know why he just sort of shows up at the end, and that's kind of it. There's no sort of I don't know why he's revered in some ways. But of course, if you played it when you were a kid and you really enjoy sort of the multiple characters, which was awesome, especially at the time, because even stuff like Mario 3D World, where you can play as multiple characters in that game, that's sort of the first time since Mario Brothers 2 where you can do that. So that was cool. Especially with their different abilities and all that. But I just played Mario. And when I get choice to play as a character in a Mario game, I always pick Mario, unless they give me the option of Yoshi without taking away certain abilities, which we'll talk about, I guess, a bit later. But yeah, I got to say, I don't rank Mario World. Oh, not Mario World. I don't rank Mario World. Jesus Christ, I don't rank Mario Brothers 2 all that much. So that's why it's like my second least favorite game of the year. At number 40, we've got a game called Hindsight. This is published by Annapurna Interactive. They do a lot of sort of artsy sort of games. And after finishing Stray in 2022, I'm like, wow, Annapurna Interactive do some great stuff. I absolutely love Stray. That's one of my favorite games of 2022. So when I was at the stage where whenever I was seeing Annapurna Interactive, I'm like, oh, I've got to play that. So this was, I think I picked it up Christmas time 2022, and I finished it early in the year. And this was another game, but sort of, it's a short game. It's probably like 3 hours long, maybe 2 hours, 4 hours. It's in there somewhere. I can't quite remember, sorry. But it felt way longer than it was for me. And why I was interested in this, because after having my son, getting to the age where I'm like, well, I'm 30 in a couple of years. At the time of recording this, I'm 30 in 6 months. But I was getting really sort of introspective about, how I've spent my 20s, how I've what I've done with my life, things I want to do. I was just getting really sort of, in my feelings and all of that. So the idea of a game all about hindsight, where, you look back at your decisions that you've made, and it's like, the feeling of regret, the feeling of remorse, the feeling of all these things that are easy to think in hindsight, but at the time it's something you don't think about. And I feel like for me, sometimes I try to have my mindset based around like, how would my hindsight be in the future based on my actions now? So that's something I think about quite a lot. So a game based on that was really interesting to me, especially like the narrative setup that Annapurna Interactive typically do with the games they publish. And this game is about a woman who's packing up her parents' house and thinking about all the memories she's had growing up with her mother, and all of that, and sort of hindsight of things she regrets and things she wish she did differently. And I think the premise is really powerful, like I said, but it didn't hit the way it maybe should have to me, because I really was in the mood for something like that. But ultimately, the story just sort of didn't play out all that interestingly, unfortunately. There was like a section where she was forced to play the piano. And so it's like, the mum was sort of putting her sort of feelings onto her daughter, and her daughter sort of pushing back against that. But, eventually when they were both adults, they sort of saw eye to eye and all of that. And that's something that was interesting for me as a father who's like, I want to be able to give my son the wisdom that I've learned over the years, and make sure that he doesn't make mistakes that I've made, doesn't waste time, doesn't, do this or that, and that he's able to achieve, just anything in his wildest dreams and all of that. But there is sort of there is a line there where it's like, you cannot put that wisdom onto somebody without them gaining that wisdom themselves over time. So it was a fascinating game. It's worth picking up on a sale, but I think I picked it up for full price, $20. But it didn't hit the way I thought, but it was definitely worth playing in some ways, but not as high as it could have been, especially since I was such in a introspective zone. At the next game at 39, I played Bramble: The Mountain King. And this was an interesting one. I played this towards the end of the year. This was on Xbox Game Pass. I played mostly on Asus ROG Ally, so my little Windows gaming handheld. It is on Switch as well. It's a technically impressive game from the way the graphics and that look. So I can't talk exactly on the Switch version, but Bramble. I had no idea what this game was going into it. It was a game all about sort of like fairy tales and a whimsical sort of adventure with a boy who can't sleep. He jumps out of his window, he goes into the forest, and within the first hour you meet like this village of gnomes. Like, oh, this is quite nice. But there is this sort of dark presence. There's this sort of I don't know, this big dark giant where you can see him in the background, and that's sort of like the darkest the game gets. You're like, all right, well, there's fairy tales. There's always a sinister sort of element to them, and that's what makes them so scary and sort of engaging for younger kids. But as the game went on, there's certain sections where if you get caught, sort of similar to like Little Nightmares, if you played those two games, you know there is some of like disgusting elements to it where like if you get caught, he just like grabs you and like rips your head off. Oh, that's that's quite visceral in some ways. And I was just trucking through the game, but there was a section where you get to a swamp and there's witches, and the witches are sacrificing kids. And there was a section where you just find a dead baby, and that's just where I went, holy shit! Like I was not prepared mentally for that game, and I got to that section, and I went back to the menu. I went back to the menu with like the game. I'm like, oh, it's rated R, 18 plus. There you go. I had no idea I was going to encounter that, and somebody with a young child. I think that was a little bit too much for me. In all honesty, I sort of I hit that section. I'm like, Jesus Christ. So that kind of diminished, personally for me, that diminished my enjoyment of the game. And that's just because of my personal experience, and that I'm not used to like, such violence when it comes to the games I play. But the biggest problem I have with the game is like about halfway through the game, it wants to become an action game, whereas before it was just a puzzle game. And there's certain bosses where you've actually got to like take cover and shoot like magic abilities back at the enemies, and it's not exactly all that clear what you need to do because it's not really an action game. And it sort of continues that trend with the bosses until the very end. The very end is like an action boss fight as well, which I'm like, why was this decision made? I thought it was way stronger in the first half, where it was like focused on the atmosphere, the puzzles, all of that. But towards the end, I feel like the game just fell apart. But an interesting game nonetheless. At 38, we got 1980X, and this is an interesting game where you play through a story, and there are certain games based on old arcade games. And I've got to be honest, this is a game that I have trouble remembering compared to the other ones. I just sort of finished this game and went, oh cool, it's that was a fun experience. It's just a very like pretty game based in how it all sort of plays out. But there's beat 'em ups and shoot 'em ups, and it was like a sort of a game based on Outlast as well. The racing game. And yeah, sort of finished that. It's like a 2-hour game, and that was sort of that. I did pick this game up in a Switch sale at some point, and it's been on my list for a while, and I decided to play it. But I think it's a fun sort of sit down just for a night, play through some like nostalgia sort of arcade games that are like based off of classics that you probably know and love. But I got to say, it doesn't really stand out compared to some of the other games that I played that I've been talking about already. Because like even like Dead Space and Hindsight and Bramble, while I was like, I've got some some criticisms of the game, and I didn't enjoy them anywhere near as much as maybe some other experiences this year. 1980X sort of just sits in a bit of a blank space for me. But if you get it for cheap, I think it's just a great sit down for a night and experience it that way. But yeah, it was sort of, that's all I've got to say on that one. At 37, we've got Behind the Frame, The Finest Scenery, and this is sort of like a paint and click game where you play as a painter, and you're going through a story where you're trying to. I'm trying to remember this one. This was one fairly early in the year as well. But you're painting. You're in this apartment. You're painting like multiple paintings, and you're trying. It's kind of like there's a bit of a mystery to it, where as you paint a painting, it unlocks something else in the apartment, and you're able to unravel the story that way. And the way the game ends as well, no spoilers, but the way the game ends is just kind of really fascinating. There's quite a big twist there. as you know discover what truly happened in this apartment and with this couple, because it's pretty clear that like your partner, I guess like you play as this woman and your husband or boyfriend, he's just through the story, it's clear that he has passed away. And as you're painting, you're learning more about the couple. You're learning more about just their everyday life and how they enjoyed each other and their company and what their hobbies were and all that. And the game ends in a really sweet place, although a little bit sad. But this was a great game I played through on Switch, and I picked it up because of Foolish Fuji's recommendation at the start of the year. Actually, it was really fantastic. So yeah, big shout out to Behind the Frame. Probably the game on the list where I'm not I've got like negative things about it. It's just we're at the point now where we're getting to like, yeah, this was great, but I've got things I like more than it. At 36, we've got Negative Nancy. In Negative Nancy, this was something that I think I saw an ad for it or a trailer for it, and I knew I needed it straight away. It looked absolutely so funny. And you play multiple scenarios where you're either working at a place which is like a parody of Walmart, or you're working at other places and you're like sort of interacting with people as they're trying to make returns. And it's it's just very funny in the way it's done. And you can either say like yes or no to people who are coming in. They're trying to return something. You just go no, or like depending on like how you do a situation, the story can change so much. And you could play through the game like within an hour, but there's so many sort of permutations to the story that I went through like a second time or a third time and tried to make the different scenarios work out differently. And some were just absolutely hilarious in the way they worked out. But this is also a game I played like at the start of the year where I can't particularly remember the specific situations. There was one where like because of like you don't return a particular item, somebody's come in trying to like return an item that's obviously been just destroyed by them. Because you don't do it, there's like a section where you've got to go into the back of the shop and like try and like get a possum out of there, and depending on how you handle that situation, you either get mauled by the possum or you make it out. Then there's other situations where you can get fired or not fired, and that determines whether you go to another shop, and that shop has their own situation, or you can stay at the certain shop you're working at. Then it's actually a really interesting game. Definitely put it on your Switch wish list if you just want like a fun game that's just like just interesting, just how your decisions make make you whatever your turnout is for this one. But that was an interesting little game. At 35, it was a game that I played recently, and that's a Highland song. And I saw this in a Nintendo Direct or an Indie World, and just with the music, I absolutely fell in love with it straight away. So I knew I had to get this one. I actually pre-ordered this one on Switch, and playing through the game, I'm glad that I did, but I didn't love it, and that's why it's this far down the list, I guess. But for those that don't know, that don't pay attention to the indie scene, even if Nintendo does the marketing. It's a game where you play as a young girl. It's a 2D game. You're exploring the Scottish countryside, up mountains, all of that. And yeah, like I said, the thing that really made it stand out to me is just the music, just like really upbeat, great sort of Scottish music. And the idea is to get to the lighthouse. What was the event called? You got to get to your uncle in the lighthouse, on the other side of the island, within a few days. So you got like a bit of a time crunch to get there. And as I'm sort of going through it, you're exploring mountains. You can find caves, you can find different collectibles and all of that. And I think the idea of the game is you're never going to find all of those collectibles in one run. And I didn't really expect it to be a game that encourages you to replay it again and again. And it was clear sort of halfway through the game where I was like nowhere near the lighthouse within the sort of time designated to me, is that like the idea is that you got to find all these paths, and then eventually, after a few playthroughs, then you'll get to the lighthouse within the designated time. But for me, that I was like, I don't want to do this again. I wasn't enjoying it enough to want to do it all again. It's probably like a 3-hour game to get through, at least the first time. Might have taken me longer actually, because the thing the game really captures well is getting lost in the Scottish countryside, all the hills, the caves, find the right place, up and over. And I did find myself sort of frustrated at some times, but I did make myself through, and I missed it by like a few days. I'm like, oh, well, that's that. And I looked at like the true ending on YouTube, and the true ending's like, whoa, that was pretty interesting. But I didn't experience that in game. I had to go and look that up myself. But probably looking back on it, like if I knew what I'd think of the game afterwards, I probably wouldn't have bought it, to be honest with you. I'm glad that I played through it and tried it, but it ultimately wasn't for me. But I think the art direction and the music in that is just absolutely fantastic. So I'm glad that I got to experience that. But the soundtrack is on Apple Music, so I do listen to it from time to time. But yeah, cool game. But yeah, it didn't turn out exactly how I wanted it to. At 34, I got Gris. So Gris was a game in my backlog for a long time. Absolutely stunning game. Watercolors, absolutely beautiful. Music is fantastic. Some of the best art direction I've seen in my life. It's absolutely amazing. And I just wrapped this game up to make sure I finished it, because I bought it when it came out, and I actually remember this. I can't remember what year it came out, but whenever it did, must have been pre-COVID, maybe 2019. Must have been 2018 or 2019. Actually, I got it here on my little wish. If I click on it, I'll be able to work it out. Look at that. Yeah, it's December 2018. So yeah, I remember actually playing it, and we were actually getting ready for my partner's pop's funeral. So it was actually like a really bad setting to play it. I remember playing it there, and a lot not really sinking in as far as like the experience. And after that, I never went back to it. But yeah, this year went back to it, and I'm glad I did. It's just like a really beautiful game, and how it, I guess the true meaning to the story of how I guess how she's dealing with a lot of pain in her life as well. It's actually kind of a really interesting game to play at that time when my family was going through quite a lot as far as loss on their side, which was just a really sad time. But glad I finished Gris. Absolutely fantastic, and I see that it's on like Game Pass and that now too. Did I say that correctly? Or am I thinking Netflix? Well, it's on one of the subscription services now anyway, so go check it out if you haven't already. At 33, we got Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins. And this is a game I had beaten before. Beaten on 3DS on Virtual Console. And, played through it again. It's quite a short game. Just a lot of fun to go through, play a Mario game. Really cozy, really nice, with Wario as the main antagonist. Really cool. I absolutely love this game. I love how it feels so different, especially to a lot of the Mario games at the time. A lot of fun. And certainly, probably not the last time I played either. It's just one of those fun games just to pick up and play whenever you feel like a bit of Mario. Next up is WarioWare Inc. Mega Micro Games. And this is another game I played before, but since it's on the Game Boy Advance app on Nintendo Switch, I thought I'd give it a go again. It's just a nice quick playthrough again. Massive fan of the WarioWare series. Absolutely love the games. And going back to where it all started, it's interesting because it feels so basic now, just a D-pad and 2 buttons. And I guess some shoulder buttons every now and again. But for the most part, it's just like, those first few. And it's just so good, man. I absolutely love going back to it. And especially with the WarioWare game that came out later in the year as well. It's just a great year for WarioWare. And at the time of playing this, I had no idea another WarioWare was going to be coming out this year. So great to go back to. And I've got to go back. What do I need to play this year? I would like to play the GameCube version. I've never played the GameCube version. And I'm not that familiar with exactly what it is. But from what I believe, or from what I think I know, is just that it's a better version of the Game Boy Advance version with like a bit of multiplayer and stuff in there with like the couple of controls. You plug in more controllers and that. So keen to give that a go this year. But yeah, WarioWare Inc. Mega Micro Games, fantastic. At 31, we got Coffee Talk, another game that I've had on my list for a long time. It's on Game Pass, so in a week where I was feeling a bit more tired at night time, it was great just to pick up the ROG Ally, be able to just make decisions and make coffee. It's such a great game. I got to see if the soundtrack is on Apple Podcasts, not Apple Music actually, because like just booting up the game and hearing the laid back sort of background music in the cafe, and the premise of the game is that you're somebody who, you have a cafe that's only open at night time, and then there's different characters, different people that come in, and you just sort of talk to them and hear about their experiences and things going on in their life, and you make coffee for them, and depending on if you make their orders right, you hear more from them. And at the end of the game, I think it actually does sort of sum up like, there are some things you don't see if you do not correctly make their order. And that's something I didn't know playing the game. There was one person in particular where I'm like, I got no idea how to make your coffee, man. So I just sort of gave him whatever the fuck I made. So yeah, I just gave him whatever. I think it was, I forgot who it was. It wasn't the cop, was it? No, it wasn't the cop. The cop was pretty easy. But there was what's his name? He's like the big buff guy. If anyone who's played it, you know who I'm talking about. But it was basically him. I think I missed a couple of things there, but for the most part, it's just relaxing, hearing some interesting stories from people, a lot of goss, different characters that come in. It's about a 4-hour game, so it's just a treat to play through. It really was. So I'm glad that I finally got to it, and I'm keen to jump onto the second one. Unfortunately, the developer of this, I think, without knowing the context of the game beforehand, but one of the main developers for this game actually passed away before the second game came out. So keen to see how the second game is with sort of the lack of, I guess, that initial, inspiration going into it. But yeah, shout out to Coffee Talk. It was really good. At number 30, we got Cocoon, which is a isometric puzzle game. You play as this little bug thing, and you put orbs on your back, and you're able to like put those orbs down and like go into that orb, which contains its own world. So by the end of the game, or halfway through the game or so, when you've been taught the mechanics of how the game wants you to, it teaches you the mechanics of how the game works, is you're able to like dive into these orbs, which contain their own worlds, and have an orb on your back, move into it, and just what the game makes you do, just as far as being able to just juggle these different worlds, going in and out and manipulating something in one world, going back out and having that affect something in another world, then just moving stuff around is absolutely fascinating. And the first few hours of this game, I felt great because I was nailing everything. I felt really smart. I'm like, this game is designed in a way that isn't too hard, but it is just like, it makes you think, and it also allows you to like, not get stuck. Because that's the biggest thing for me in a puzzle game. I do not want to get stuck. And that largely, that comes from just my personal gaming, where I am playing probably 9 o'clock at night to 12. And I don't know how well my puzzle, my problem solving aspect of my brain, I don't really want to work it that hard. I just want to sort of, go through a story or grind in an RPG, or, that's why a lot of the time, especially in the last few years, I just go back to Mario Kart or Smash Brothers or Pokemon. I just want that easy sort of experience to go to. So when I'm trying games like Cocoon, it was a really nice sort of experience just going through the game and not getting stuck too much. At the end of the game though, towards the end, I did have to like, all right, I need a bit of a hint, because I had no idea. And it was ramping up in difficulty towards the end. But yeah, just a really clever game. When you finish it, you're like, wow, that was just genius how the developers were able to put those different scenarios together and use those different mechanics in the way they did. And that's without discussing just how beautiful the game is. It has such a striking visual visual look to it. It's just absolutely beautiful, and how the different worlds sort of differentiate or just look different to one another. How, like, one uses very warm colors, another one uses very cool colors, and you can just tell what world you're in just by the colors. And that really helps when you need to be jumping between these different worlds, quickly in order to manipulate what the game is asking you to do. So Cocoon, absolutely fantastic. Available on Nintendo Switch. I played it on the ROG Ally via Xbox Game Pass. Still on Game Pass if you want to give it a go, if you're a member of that subscription service. But highly recommended. It's only sort of this low on the list purely because it's just not my type of game. Especially, well, it wasn't the game I was looking for at the time I played it, and that's just like busy during the day, physically knackered, and by the time it gets to my Lucas and all that in bed, it's like, all right, I need something a little bit more easy. I need something a bit brain dead to play, not something so smart, sophisticated. But maybe if I played it, say, like right now during the day when I'm recording this, maybe a different story. I can put a bit more effort or brain power into it. At 29, we got Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. And this is a game that I played through a fair bit of the year. I chipped at it level by level, bit by bit. I fell off of it a few times just purely because I got a little bit bored. It didn't capture my attention all that much as far as sticking with it. But it was great just to have a platformer just to play in those moments I sort of talked about with Cocoon, where I'm like, I don't feel like really sitting down and thinking out this problem right now. I'll play some Kirby. And it was great for that. I really enjoyed it. It was, the power-ups, everything new they added to the original Wii version, which I actually didn't play, was great. And the what's his name? Magmalore, his epilogue at the end as well, where level by level you're powering him up to eventually become like a powerhouse at the end of that epilogue, which takes about 2 hours to complete. Really enjoyed that. I thought that was a really sort of smart use of changing the gameplay mechanics up from like your typical Kirby adventure, and how it was quite short as well. The epilogue works really well, and you can go back to it, do high scores, all of that type of thing. So yeah, that was absolutely fantastic. That was a great addition to the game. It might just be a bit of a shame that it is locked behind completing the main story, but at the same time, sort of that it's a bit of a spoiler in some ways, because it is an epilogue. It is a spoiler for the main story for Kirby. But definitely worth checking out. It's one of those games too where it's hard to, in some ways, it's hard to justify a Kirby game for that much money, like $80. But it was a game I was provided by Nintendo. It would have been interesting whether I would have picked this up for $80. I'm not quite sure. There were so many games within the year that would have been worth picking up. But I did really enjoy my time with Kirby. And outside of Dreamland, this is probably the game that I've spent the most time with in the Kirby series. So definitely a shout out to Return to Dreamland. At 28, we've got Stray Gods, the role-playing musical. And I heard about this game on a Kind of Funny Games Daily. I think they were talking about it and just how interesting the concept was. I was just all about it straight away. Hearing about a video game musical with a bunch of notable voice actors, from Troy Baker to Laura Bailey, just a lot of big timers that within the games industry. If you pay attention to who's acting out your favorite characters, this game had them, and it just drew me in straight away. Added it to my Steam wish list, and when I knew it was coming to Switch, I picked it up on Switch as well. It's available on everything. And it wasn't until, I think, after I bought it, or just before I bought it, I found it was an Australian game as well, like made here in Australia. So I'm like, oh, that's really exciting. That a game that is that unique in premise, that drew me in, wanted to pick it up, and it's also supporting the awesome Australian scene as well. That made me really happy that, the folks here just have, so many great ideas for unique video games. And playing through the game, it definitely has its problems. It definitely has, like, you can see where the production level went, paying for such high-level voice actors. You can see where the production, it went towards that. Whereas the game, there's no animation. It is very much just like still shots. If somebody's running away, you see them gradually move further and further away. There's no like moving on mouths when there's talking. Very visual novel inspired, I would say. It is very much set out in that way, which is fine. It doesn't really take away from the game in that way. And the gameplay is minimal as well. Throughout the game, you're getting exposition, the story's unraveling, then a song comes on. And I think what's probably the most interesting and unique about this is that throughout the song, you can make decisions. It actually changes the song and changes where the story will end up as well. And that was interesting in some ways, because if you look at the soundtrack on Apple Music or Spotify, you can see there's multiple versions of each song because they can be different. It is like a choose your own adventure in some ways, which is cool. But I think as well as finishing the game, there's no song where I want to go back and listen to it just by itself. And I think that is largely because the songs are set up in the way where they can change, where verses can be different and all of that, depending on what route you take, whether you're with a character or against a character. There's lots of ways the story can sort of unfold in that way. And the game is rather expensive as well. When it first came out, I bought it for $45. And, that's pretty expensive for, what I would say is it's a good game, but it's definitely not for everyone. If you don't like musicals, you won't like this. If you don't like visual novels, you won't like this. And I think it took me I played it over the course of 2 weeks, and it wasn't super engaging me, but the way the story wrapped up, I thought it was pretty cool in the end. And, the sort of the moral of the story, everything that came out of it, was worth it. It was, I'm glad that I played it, especially because it's Australian. There's obviously going to be some bias with that, just because, when I go to PAX and see the local Australian community and game dev community, I'm just so impressed every single time I travel up to Melbourne for that. And even at PAX, they had a bit of a celebration night on the Friday when we got there, and they were celebrating Australian games. They had a Stray Gods concert. They had a a bunch of other games there too. I can't quite remember them because that game is escaping my brain right now, but it doesn't really matter. But yeah, Stray Gods, worth picking up on sale, 100%. If this game goes on 50% off or even more, that's oh yeah, give it a go. It's a pretty unique idea, and the story, is pretty neat. It's about an 8-hour game as well. It's pretty good for a visual novel. It doesn't go on too long, but not too short either. At 27, this is a big one. We got Metroid Prime Remastered. And Metroid Prime is a game I've been wanting to play for years and years, but, what's the likelihood of me getting out my GameCube and finding a copy of Metroid Prime? What's the likelihood of me getting out the Wii? I've actually got a borrowed copy of the trilogy from my friend from years ago, and I don't want to play with the motion controls either. And playing on an emulator and that, it doesn't hold my attention all that much either when it's not it's an interesting thing because you got access to so much stuff, but honestly, you putting money down for a game actually really incentivizes you to actually, make most of it. So even if you're getting stuff for free, illegally or anything like that, it's not that much incentive. But with Metroid Prime Remastered, it's all right, fantastic. We don't have motion controls. We have a beautifully remastered game, which looks awesome. And I played through it. And I've got to admit, for this game, I used a lot of a guide because, like I mentioned with Cocoon, I guess, I didn't want to be stuck. I don't want to be where do I go? I got no idea. And it sort of really, it helped me stay focused and really understand of what makes this game special. And this game is truly special, just the level design is just amazing. And just how this is the first 3D Metroid game, how Retro Studios took on a beloved Nintendo IP back on the GameCube and made this, and it holds up so well with the remastered version, just how everything works. Obviously the gameplay been changed. You can move and strafe and that while shooting, which is, I couldn't imagine not being able to do that. But yeah, the level design is just immaculate, and how it uses the space and how finding secrets and hidden areas and all that. It was just a absolutely blast to go through. Just an absolutely very special game. But it also was a game that I'm glad I played. It was yeah, I'm glad I played it, but also just like it's not exactly what I want. I want. I kind of like my games a little bit more linear, or a lot more linear, in some ways. Whereas like I love exploring, but just the idea of like I've got this, and I've got to go back to this very specific place. Um, yeah, I don't know how I wouldn't have done it with a guide. I got no, I probably wouldn't have. So I'm glad that I did. I know some people out there would like be like pointing at their phone or their whatever they're listening to this on, but like, Drew, you're a bloody noob. You're an amateur. But man, I'm I'm glad I did, because I would have fallen off this game within the first hour or so. But Metroid Prime Remastered, really special game. I'm glad I played it. I understand now why it's such a beloved game in Nintendo's staple. It's one of like the probably like a top 10 fan favorite Nintendo game. So it's a very important one to be able to understand of why people enjoy it. At 26, we got Metroid Fusion. So this was another Metroid game that I played. I beat this one before, so this was technically my first Metroid game I ever completed. And I enjoyed Metroid Fusion more, purely because it's shorter. And this was another game that, it is like probably the most linear Metroid game out there. But there were still some sections where I'm like, all right, where do I go? What do I need to do? So I did use a guide for this one as well. Played it on Nintendo Switch Online. Made great use of the rewind feature. And I'm not afraid to say it. It's just, it is what it is. I can't say I'm very good at Metroid games at all. And I really enjoyed this one. Just like how creepy it was. Just like the atmosphere of being chased by, the X, who's taken on the form of Samus. Just like another great look into the Metroid series and why it's so special, and especially when you consider like back in, was it 2002? Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime came out on the same day. Like that is crazy. So I really had a 2002 sort of experience playing through these two games, and it was really interesting. So I'm keen to play some more Metroid games this year. Definitely want to do Zero Mission and maybe Super Metroid as well. I would like to do those ones, see where I can fit them in. I already have a massive list of games, but especially Zero Mission. I'm sort of just waiting on that one, to be honest with you, to come to Switch Online. Because I could get a cartridge. I've got the Analog Pocket. I could just play it on emulator. But honestly, I really need that rewind feature when it comes to Metroid games. Just being honest. So yeah, I'm keen to get that one on Switch Online. So hopefully that happens within the next few months or so. That'll be great. Next up is just a replay I did of Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3. So I played through Mario Bros. 3 and, just really enjoyed it. I think I played through in a night or a couple of sittings. I can't quite remember. But, it was great for going through this game. I think I only played the original one initially. I don't know if I've done like the All-Stars Collection version or the Mario Advance version. Can't quite remember, but I have done it now, just playing through it when it came to the service. All-time classic, just an amazing game. But I will say, above it at 24 is the superior 2D Mario game. It is Super Mario World, Super Mario Advance 2. And this was actually the version of the game I played Mario World with. This was my very first Mario game I ever played back on my Game Boy Advance SP. I got my Game Boy Advance SP for Pokemon. I absolutely loved it. And I remember sort of thinking to myself, like, I need to branch out to other games other than Pokemon. And, a Nintendo platform, I should probably get a Mario game. And I think it was like $80 when I was a kid. And just imagine how much $80 is as a kid in 2004 or whenever I bought this, going to my local video game shop, picking this up and not regretting it one bit, even though it was really expensive. Just an absolutely fantastic game. And I remember it taking me a long time as a kid, and the end fight with Bowser, finding it really hard, didn't understand what to do. And playing it now, I beat it like in 2 hours, and I wasn't even rushing it. I think I took was it a shortcut or not through the Star World? I can't quite remember, but I didn't even do that on purpose. I sort of just found it and went through it and popped out. Yeah, I just did it in 2 hours and beat Bowser. I'm like, oh, that was like one sitting, just one night. I'm like, you know, 10-year-old me would be very impressed. So yeah, shout out to Mario World, man. Absolutely fantastic game, and this is my favorite version of it, just because of nostalgia. At 23, we got Super Mario RPG, and this was the remake that came out this year. And this was a game I started multiple times on emulators and Virtual Console. No, I didn't buy it on Virtual Console. I just emulated it. And I remember playing it at high school, and played through like the first hour or so, or not even. I barely played any of it, to be honest with you. I just there's sort of no incentive to keep going on an emulator. You've really sort of got to be focused on it, but especially when there's a bunch of other stuff you're probably playing at the time. But with the remake, well, all right, this is much like Dead Space, much like Metroid Prime 4, where it's like, this is a great opportunity to play it, brought up to the modern time, and it's in the zeitgeist, everyone's playing it, and it's a game that I've been wanting to play for a long time. So when playing it, the graphics are absolutely phenomenal. The added cutscenes are great. All the quality of life features as well is fantastic. The added sort of super moves are fun to do as well and come in clutch in some fights. I'm sure they make some fights really easy. But for me, the game still did feel very dated. It was very true to the original version. And I think one thing for me, just that I didn't enjoy that much, is like, the Mario RPG series that I'm more familiar with is the Mario and the Luigi RPG series, starting with Partners in Time on DS. And that was a great game. And a lot of like these RPGs where you see the enemies in the overworld, you can sort of like hit them in the overworld to get like a one-up when the battle starts. And that interactive element sort of really plays a lot that I've discovered with Mario RPG, where you don't have that ability. You can't do a jump on them to get an advantage in battle. You can't hit them with the hammer to get the first move or a bit of damage early. It was very much just run into them, do a battle. And the start off with the game, it sort of started kind of slow for me, just like with the two initial characters, Mario and Mallow. And I don't know, just with the abilities that you have with those two characters. And the first few bosses were actually a little bit hard. I'm like, why am I finding this so hard? But it wasn't until like, Bowser, especially Peach. I think Peach comes in clutch, and Geno. Once they are all in the party, and you sort of work out all their different abilities and their strengths and their weaknesses, where the game becomes a lot more interesting. You can sort of switch around depending on their weaknesses and all of that. And the game became a lot more fun for me. And the story for me was a fun little romp. It wasn't anything special. I wouldn't even compare it to like the Mario and Luigi games that I played on Game Boy Advance and DS. But it was fun enough. I'm glad that I played it. It was kind of a sweet little story. Especially, I can imagine at the time where like Bowser isn't the main bad guy and you do get to play as him. That would have been a very special moment. But we have had that moment in other Mario RPGs at this point, as well as like, just other Mario games. So glad I played it. Really, really great how they remastered it, but definitely not my favorite in the series. At 22, we got Gunbrella from the indie publisher Devolver Digital. And this was a game that stood out to me for a long time. I was keen to play it. It was playable at PAX. And I remember a lot of people saying good things about it. I never played it because I'm like, I'm going to play it anyway. I'm not that worried. Especially there was like a bit of a lineup, and I hate lines. I can't stand lines. So I didn't play it until now. And I really didn't know what to expect with the game, because the whole hook is that you have a umbrella that is also a gun. So you can use it to, use it as a shield while you're shooting. You can parasol. You can use it to float down. Just a bunch of different gameplay mechanics that are a lot of fun. But I wasn't expecting a pretty engaging story as you go throughout the game as well. You play as somebody trying to avenge their wife and looking for their stolen daughter. And just, he plays a pretty broken character who's going through different, different towns and different
environments to, eventually take them down. But the story is what really stood out to me. It was really interesting how the game sort of ended up, and there was actually some elements of the story that you can sort of change the outcome of what happens as well. And there's a secret ending as well, which ends in a really sort of fascinating way, which completely changes what happens. But apart from that, it's just like a lot of funny moments, a lot of characters along the way, with gameplay which holds up really well. I will say for me though, there are a lot of moments where like it relies heavily on like the analog stick to be able to like do a dash up or pull off certain moves. And after like a few minutes on Switch, I found my hand just not being able to do it without cramping up or anything like that. So a lot of this was played on a Switch Pro controller, even when it was on the TV or in handheld mode. It's like put this laying in bed, put the stand out on my chest and play with the Pro controller that way. But definitely a fantastic game that I really enjoyed this year. And this might be a game where I should have ranked it higher, honestly. Yeah, it should have been a few positions higher. I really did enjoy Gunbrella, and when I finished it, I was very impressed with just everything that it offered. At 21, we got a nice little replay here. We got Pokemon Yellow. And Pokemon Yellow, I absolutely love the Pokemon series. And this is probably a good place to say that, like, this isn't a ranking like, IGN where it's like, this is this is like the best game, this is the worst game. This is just like my personal experience and how much I enjoyed them this year in particular. So like, Pokemon Yellow is like one of my favorite games. So it'd be like very close to the top if I had to like really rank them just on like the game's actual merit. And also like Dead Space Remake, that wouldn't be at the bottom either. That's just how much I personally enjoyed it. If I had to review it just for myself, like just in general for people to make a purchasing decision on, I would have to say it's a great game, but for me, it wasn't all that enjoyable. So I just thought I had to put that in here where there's a Pokemon game ranked quite low. But how I played this game was different this year because at the start of the year, they had a Pokemon Presents where I was just really hoping the classic Pokemon games were going to be coming to Nintendo Switch Online. And we obviously didn't get that. And I was just so keen to be able to play a Pokemon game on a current console, on the TV especially. That's something I really want to play, like an official way to play a Pokemon game on a TV, not just a computer or even a analog pocket or something like that. But we didn't get it, so I said stuff it. So I emulated it. I played through Pokemon Yellow. And with speed up, so I could hold in one of the analog triggers and do 5 times speed up. And through doing that, I was able to complete the game in one sitting. So from the very start, getting your starter Pokemon Pikachu, to the very end, getting all the legendaries, including Mewtwo, which is where I ended the game. I did it in one sitting, which took me 5 hours. So my in-game clock was about 20 hours, but speeding it up 5 times, obviously, a 5-hour sitting will allow me to do that. And I was not planning on doing that. I was very much planning on just starting the game and playing through it. But it wasn't until I was very far through the game where I'm like, I reckon I could do this. So I think I finished it like really late. I was so tired by the time I wrapped it up. It must have been like 2 o'clock or maybe later. It could have been later because I remember actually sitting down and starting the game pretty late once Lucas was in bed. But playing through the game how I did, it was a different experience to what I typically do just on a normal playthrough of one of the Kanto games, where it was a speed run, but not really because I'm obviously using speed up. But just a speed run as in terms of actually getting it finished in one sitting was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. I always wanted to give speedrunning Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu or Let's Go Eevee a speedrun, just to see how well I go, because that's a game I know pretty well. The Kanto games, know where to go. It's a relatively easy game as well. Just need to know where the Pokemon are and good ways of leveling up and all that. But Pokemon Yellow doing it this way was so much fun, but doing it so late, doing all of those puzzles, all of the gyms, all of the battles, everything that game has to offer, condensed into like one sitting. My brain was fried by the end of it, even though it's a game I know pretty well. But there was a section where you get to the Safari Zone. You got to look for the Warden's Teeth to get Surf to be able to go to Cinnabar Island. I remember thinking oh god, where is it? Like I could not remember it. My brain was done by that point. But it was a really, really fun experience to go through and play that game like I did. So yeah, shout outs to Pokemon Yellow, one sitting, got all the Pokemon. I had by the time I finished, I had Pikachu, all the starters leveled up, and I think I had like two of the birds in the party. I just had probably a typical 8-year-old's party from back in the early 2000s when people were playing this game. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, man. It was a fun way to play it. And what's actually really cool about playing on an emulator, I've got it set up so through a website called Retro Achievements, and they just have it so do a gym, you get an achievement, do a certain thing, get an achievement. There was even in Pokemon Yellow, they had achievements for having getting different emotions from Pikachu when you turn around and talk to him. So when he's happy, you get an achievement, and there's achievements for every single emotion. And some will be easy to get, other ones will be a little bit more difficult just because of the parameters or how much HP they have or stuff like that. But yeah, adding achievements to the retro games was a lot of fun as well. But the most impressive thing that I want to talk about, including the next game as well, because the next game I want to talk about is a Pokemon game. But as soon as the champion battles started, in the top left corner there was a countdown timer for speed running. I was like, whoa, that is awesome. Then it automatically, when you hit credits, it automatically sends your time to the leaderboards, and you can see how you stack up. And even though I was speeding up the game, it still had my in-game clock of how long it took me. So it was counting upwards from 20 whatever hours it was. So yeah, a really interesting way to play the Pokemon games. If you've played them a million times, probably worth giving it a go on an emulator just for that reason. It was a lot of fun, and doing speed runs if you're interested in doing a little bit quicker as well. And going onto the leaderboards through retro achievements. Yeah, really great experience that I really enjoyed playing it through this year. And honestly, it would have been an experience I would have not have gotten if it just came out on Switch. I wouldn't have got the achievements. I wouldn't have got the speed up to play it like I did. I wouldn't have gotten the the leaderboard sort of timer just come up randomly, because I didn't even expect it. It just came up. That's awesome. What an awesome sort of feature. And that it visually shows me as well, at a certain point, and it knows to pop up when, the Gary fight happens as well. So yeah, actually kind of better than how it would have been on Switch. So Pokemon Company, I can save my money, I guess. Good on you. Number 20 is Pokemon Crystal. I did the exact same thing with Pokemon Crystal, and it was a great experience as well. I didn't do this one in one sitting. I did this one in 2 sittings. And since this game is a little bit more grindy, I did put on a rare candy cheat just so I could go through quickly, just relive my experience in the Johto region, but also not be stuck there grinding. I didn't make my Pokemon level 100 or anything like that, but I did just get them up to where they need to be and just move on with the game. I wasn't there. I wasn't there to be playing that game for a couple of weeks or anything like that. I just wanted to relive my experience in a couple of sittings and enjoy myself that way. And once again, it was a great way to play it. Just sped up 5 times, going through it, getting achievements. Absolutely fantastic. So next up, I want to do the same, but with Pokemon Emerald. So keen to do that one. Number 19 is WarioWare Move It. Brand new WarioWare game came out this year. Very excited that it came out. And actually haven't talked about it on the podcast. So this game, I was so thrilled to see when it finally got announced. It was a game that I've been wanting for a long time. Just a true sequel to WarioWare Smooth Moves on Nintendo Wii. One of my favorite Wii games. And there was actually a thing going around online saying, oh, what was your favorite Wii launch game? And WarioWare Smooth Moves was on that list. I'm like, was that a launch game? And I'm like, I can't remember that being a launch game. But then looking into it, it came out a couple of months later in Australia and America. But it was a launch game in Japan. I'm like, huh. I know it came out a little bit later in Japan too. Maybe that. I can't quite remember. But I could not remember Smooth Moves being that earlier Wii game. I'm like, really? I thought it was a bit later. But yeah, no, it was right there. And then it led to another memory of me being like, yeah, because I remember I had $100 and I had a choice between Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess or WarioWare Smooth Moves. And yeah, Bryce, my best friend Bryce, was the one who said, "Oh, get Zelda, get Zelda." So I got Zelda, and I can't remember how much later I got WarioWare. It would have been within that year. It might have been not long after. I actually can't remember. But that's a bit of a bit of a side story to what I'm talking about. But love Smooth Moves. So getting a sequel in 2023 was awesome. And it came out at a time where I was sharing, getting home from work, my body was tired, and the idea of like holding your hands above your head, like I was like, oh no, we're not doing this. So I didn't finish it I didn't really play it properly for like another couple of weeks until like work was my body wasn't quite as tired. But when I actually finally got into it, it was so much fun. I think the Joy-Cons are a little bit more finicky than the Wiimote, but regardless, I think it was, just an absolutely fantastic follow-up. It is interesting, though, because it did sort of make me think about just like, there are games from my childhood on Wii, where we have gotten new versions of them on Switch. And a lot of the sort of smaller ones that aren't like, Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, etc., have come out. Like we have got a Nintendo Switch Sports, which I would say is, not as good as Wii Sports. Does not have the magic, does not have the ease of use, all of that the Wii version has. Mario Strikers instead of Mario Strikers Charged on Wii, nowhere near as good. I'm like, okay. And with WarioWare, it's sort of like, it's like just as good, but I'm just in a different place where in my free time, I don't necessarily feel like standing up and doing that, doing it all that much. Like I would get like a real hankering to like, oh, I've got to go and play some WarioWare. But, I played through it now and I enjoyed it, but I don't have like a desire to go back and do high scores and unlock like, all of the little goodies and all that in there. But that's just a place and time thing for me now. And for me, a lot of my enjoyment from games like that and Nintendo Switch Sports will come from playing with my kids in the next few years. So that's something that I've been thinking about as well when it comes to like, finally got a game I wanted, but is it something that I really needed? Don't know about that one. But they did it really well. It wasn't like a Strikers Charged where it came out. So, this sucks. It's really good. Number 18, Beacon Pines. This is a game that came out the previous year, 2022. It came out straight to Game Pass, and I'm like, oh, that game looks cool. And I heard some great things about it, but really didn't know what it was. But I just liked the sort of hand-drawn art style of it, the cute little animal characters. And I got a notification that, Beacon Pines leaving Xbox Game Pass. I'm like, okay, it's time to play it before it leaves the service. I had like a week sort of limit on this. So I'm like, I've got to make sure I finish this, because if I have like an hour to go and then it leaves Game Pass and I've got to pay for it, that's going to be really annoying. Like I can't not finish it because I don't really want to just like have the mystery of the story just left lingering over my head. So I'm like, all right, I've got to finish it. So I played it over the course of a week, and what I got was something that was actually really special. It's a really special game that the story has stuck with me quite a bit this year. And it was going into it, I had no idea how much of like a narrative game it would be, but and sort of how the illusion of choice, but how also like it is a linear game. It's a really smartly made game. So you play as like I can't remember all their names at this point. It's been a little while, but you play as a character, and you sort of want to unravel the mystery of what is happening in Beacon Pines. You've got your friend along the way, and the game introduces you to the main mechanic of the game is like finding different words in the game, and you can use those in certain scenarios where it asks you to like put in a certain word, and that will sort of affect the story. But it's not like a choice, really. It's not like, oh, look, you do this choice, you get this aspect, you do this choice, you get that aspect. It is very much looking for a very particular word that you find along the way. And then you sort of work on like a branch from the tree, like the story tree. and then you get a word from progressing the story throughout this certain branch, and you bring that word all the way back to the start of the branch, and then it can make its own branch. And the way the story branches out throughout multiple times of the story is fascinating. How certain actions can lead to certain things, and that certain thing leads to a certain word that you can bring back and then completely change that situation that led to a bad situation that you could no longer progress with that way. And I thought it was just a really fascinating story about, what truly happened in Beacon Pines, which is this small rural community with all these animals. There's a big mystery there, and certainly wouldn't want to ruin it for you guys. It's awesome. And since I beat it, it left Game Pass, but I saw it was on sale for $18 on a regular basis. 40% off. I think it's like a $30 game usually, but it's on sale quite a bit. So add it to your wish list if you just want a nice, breezy 8-hour sort of mystery game with a great mechanic, and it's just really clever. Probably the cleverest game I played all year. Absolutely fantastic. Number 17 is a game I struggle to pronounce. I hear it. I try to make sure I remember how to say it. But I do not. We're at the point now, it's a French word. And the way I would say it is I would say Dordogne. But I know it's not that. Dordogne? I'm going to say Dordogne. That sounds at least a little bit closer to it. But I've got actually a couple of games here in a row, which I actually played on Game Pass. Game Pass actually killed it this year when it came to indie games that I wanted to play. But this was a game that I first noticed through Nintendo marketing, through our indie world. And beautiful, beautiful art style, hand-drawn. You play as a young girl. She's visiting her grandmother in France, going to a house, and she's not happy about it. She doesn't want to go and see her grandma. There's things going on between her and her mum that you learn about throughout the game. And as you sort of go off, you explore different parts of the town, and you come across a friend who has history with your grandma, just like his parents and all of that. You learn that, and it's just like a really quite sweet story, just absolutely expertly done, just beautiful art style and music and everything. And while I am pretty hazy on the story at this point, I can remember really enjoying this game. So still on Game Pass, go and check it out. Definitely on Switch. Pick it up on a sale if you have to, because I would say a sale because we all like saving money. I like putting stuff on my wish list and be like, yep, it's on sale. But even for me, sometimes I leave stuff on a wish list and it's like, so I'm not going to pick you up now. You've been on my wish list for months, so I feel a bit silly buying you for full price. But Dordogne, that's how I'm saying it. I don't think that's correct, but definitely fantastic. Number 16, Vemba, which is another indie game played on Game Pass. This is about a immigrant Indian family in Canada, sort of their experience of moving to the country, having their, bringing their son into the world, how they sort of bringing them up with their culture within, obviously the country of Canada, and how that culture sort of clashes with the son and how he's looked at being raised with that, but how when he's adult, how he reflects on that culture and how important he sees that it is to his family is just a really beautiful game. It's only like a 90-minute game, took me an hour and a half to beat, but the impact that it left me with was really profound, how it was able to, show just how special Indian culture is, just with the gameplay mechanics. Because how the game is set out is that Vemba, the mother, she she loves cooking, and the gameplay revolves around you making Indian dishes. And as you're doing that, you're following a recipe book, and you're doing it the way the recipe book wants you to do it. If you don't, you've got to start again. But it's relatively straightforward for the most part until the game sort of makes you build the recipe book, because the recipes are like missing sections. You got to sort of guess or experiment with the cooking, which is interesting as well. But like the sound design in this, where you can hear like the crackle and pop of like your dishes cooking, and it's done in such a way with the visuals and the sound. How like I was playing in bed with my headphones on, and I swear I could smell some Indian food. Like it smelled like, oh god, it was a good smelling Indian dish, which I couldn't really smell. But yeah, it was just a really, really eye-opening game, just as far as how special Indian culture is, how important it is for these traditions to be passed on, and like in any culture, if you're living in a foreign country to the one you grew up in, how important it is to pass it on to your children, and the struggles your children or somebody growing up with past traditions, growing up in a different part of the world where, this game tackles how the boy sort of, is looked down on, how like people, call him names because he always smells like Indian food, I guess, because, such a, yeah, I don't know. It tackles racism in some ways too, with like what happens to particular members of the family, and it never overtly says it, but it very much points towards things like that happening. It's a very special game, and the shortest game I played this year, I would say. But this game actually made my top 10 list of the games that actually released in 2023. Absolutely beautiful game. It really is, and it takes barely any time. Like I said, 90 minutes. Go and play it. Got Xbox Game Pass. Go and play it that way. But it's like a $20 game as well. It will go on sale, I dare say. I actually got it on Steam. I got it in a humble bundle. So they might be getting to the point where actually they're trying to throw this game out just to get people to play it at this point. But yeah, fantastic game. So please play it. I think you'll get a real kick out of it, even if it's not like something that you usually gravitate towards. It's such a short game, so it'll leave you with an impact just from I guess the story alone. But it is like it is like visual novel sort of reading text, seeing like it is animated, seeing it all happen until you're doing the gameplay sequences where it is like cooking. But yeah, cool stuff. Number 15 is Blank, which if you remember is that black and white game where you play as a fox and a deer. That was released at the start of the year in 2023. And yeah, just another game that visually just so unique in the way it looks, and just beautiful in its own way. Even though with no color, it's able to really show just the atmosphere and the bleakness of the snow and the locations, environments that you find yourself in. It's really great. But what made the game stand out to me this year in particular is like if I just played it by myself with like the CPU controlling the second character, I'm like, yeah, it was an interesting game with some cool puzzles. Using the different abilities. The fox can do different things the deer can do. Deer can access different areas where the fox can like basically move platforms into place and do some stuff like that. So you're using different abilities like that. And the way the game wraps up, I think that was a great game. But for me, it was also a game that I thought to myself, I wonder if this would be a good game for somebody who has never played a game before, like never sat through and played a game to completion. And like even to the point where would it be good for somebody who doesn't even like playing Mario Kart because they don't want to be beaten or something like that. And of course, if you've ever heard the show before, this is somebody who I'm talking about is my wife. My wife doesn't play games, isn't into games, and even some like some suggestions other people have suggested, like, oh, well, Mario Kart's pretty fun, and this isn't that. Like, none of them worked. Animal Crossing, a lot of people got into during the pandemic, and when Chantel saw Animal Crossing, she said, looks like it's for like preschoolers. I'm like, oh my god. So, there was pretty much no saving her, no getting her into video games. But for Blank, I said, all right, grab the controller. Who do you want to play as? I think she played as the fox, and I played as the deer. And we're getting to the different puzzles. We're sort of talking together, working it out. I'm saying like, oh look, you can go and pull that, and I'll jump here, and just sort of working it out together. And we had a great time. It was like a 3-hour, 4-hour game. Played through the whole thing. and it was just a really actually special experience being able to play it with my wife. It was really nice, and like I said, I don't know if it would have been ranked as high just on the game itself. If I played by myself. It's definitely a game you need to play with someone, and it does have the ability to play online, I believe. So you do have options, but make sure you play this with somebody with voice chat, and I think you'll have a great experience. And if you are in the position I am, where your significant other or friend or whoever doesn't like or play video games, doesn't really see the magic that they offer, this might be one that that you pick up and give it a go, because yeah, I feel like my wife is like the hardest person to ever get into a game, and she sat through it and played it, and that would have largely been just because she wants to make an effort with stuff I like. But yeah, this was a really great experience. Number 14 is Toem. Toem has been in my backlog for a while, and it's been on PlayStation Plus. I played it on PlayStation 5, and this was a great game as well. And it's sort of it is a game where I'm really reaching back in my my thoughts here, because I really enjoyed the game. I played it in, I think, one or two. It would have been, was it one sitting? It could have been one sitting. It's like a 4-hour game. You're going around taking different photos of different locations, and then when you get enough, you can get on the bus and you can like progress to the next section. But I can't quite remember the story. But I remember like a lot of like interesting characters along the way, and yeah, just a really great game. I can't quite remember. I did actually platinum the game as well on PlayStation. I think I completely forgot about that as well, because when I got my PlayStation wrap up, like check the games, like how many hours did I spend? It was like, I got one platinum. I'm like, that's not right. But oh yeah, I did a platinum Toem. So yeah, I did the platinum in one night too. But this was it's funny because this is another black and white game, which actually works out really well. But I really quite like this one. But I got to admit, when I'm talking about it here, I'm like, I can't quite articulate myself, because I can't quite remember exactly what everything, like all these little bits. But very much like a puzzle game where it sort of asks you to do a certain task, take a picture of a certain thing, and you've got to sort of find it in the world, which is pretty neat. Number 13 is Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. So just to put all of the Spider-Man games on PlayStation 5 into one section, so I'm not repeating myself as we go on. Got number 13 is Miles Morales. Number 12 is Marvel Spider-Man 2, and number 11 is Marvel Spider-Man. Every time I said Marvels, I don't know why I wanted to say Miles. I don't know. I can't even say that now. But I absolutely love playing these games. The original Spider-Man on PlayStation 4 was on my backlog for 5 years, and I finally beat it last year because I wanted to be able to play Spider-Man 2 with the context of the story, obviously. I'm not going to jump to the second one without playing the first two games. But playing Marvel Spider-Man, it really showed to me how well this game holds up. And yes, I did play the remastered on PlayStation 5. I did actually pick up Miles Morales with my PlayStation 5 in 2020 on launch day. So I got the remastered copy, had that sitting on my hard drive for 3 years, let alone the physical copy on PlayStation 4 I had for the 2 years before that. But we finally got to it this year, and I was blown away with just how well it played. The remaster looks awesome. The story was great. What they did with the characters was fantastic. How the villains turn out was really interesting. Loved every moment of it. And this was a game in particular where the first time I played it, I got really sucked into collecting everything. So I didn't play much of the story the first time around, but I went and got all the backpacks. So this time I said, I'm not going to distract myself. I'm not going to worry about the platinum trophy, not going to worry about doing all the hideouts, not going to just, waste my time and get caught up and then fall off like I can do, like I did with the original game. But just focus on the story, do some fun things along the way. You can collect things off to the side. You can do some side challenges, side quests, but don't get too hung up on it. Let's just do the story, have fun, and experience the game, especially. And if you want to, like, you're going to get much more because I got 2 more games to play after this. So yeah, the end fight was spectacular as well. I was like, whoa, this is awesome. And just the presentation of the finishes and, the moves and everything was awesome. So I really, really enjoyed it. So it's actually my favorite Spider-Man game out of the 3. And then next I played, Miles Morales. Miles Morales was more of the same, but really fleshing out Miles Morales as a character, using his abilities, the Venom powers, where you're actually able to like electrocute your enemies and do all that stuff, and just seeing the differences and having a more sort of smaller story just for Miles Morales when Peter and Mary Jane are in Europe, away from New York City, and a nice sort of bite-sized 12-hour game. After like, a 20-hour game, a little bit longer. But yeah, I really enjoyed Miles Morales as well. I thought it was great how they're able to do like just a smaller bite-sized game leading into the next major game, which is cool. So I wrapped them up before Marvel Spider-Man 2. And Spider-Man 2 was interesting because I'm going into it like, a month or so after finishing Miles Morales. And for the most part, Spider-Man 2, I'm like, this is made for PlayStation 5. Everything is just so much more advanced, just in the way how, you're able to go and travel fast across New York City with the web glider. You're able to do, like in the opening sort of segment of the game where you're versing Sandman, he throws you across the city, and just like with the SSD, like natively on the PlayStation 5 now, where this game is like a native PS5 game, you're able to just like load in the whole thing. There doesn't have to be a cutscene. It is just all in gameplay, and it's just so spectacular, and just how everything's put together. And a few smaller things in the gameplay as well. You have a parry now, which took a little bit of getting used to, but in the heat of battle, like when you're like doing kick, punch, kick, that can come a little bit old. Just in the first one, there is like a lot of pressing the square button. But I guess the parry, that was an idea to sort of break that up. You kick, punch. When you see a punch coming, you parry it. You can go and use one of your gadgets, your abilities, all of that. But for me, when I sat down and thought about it, I thought I probably didn't enjoy it as much as the first one. And it's not because it's worse. It's just because, like, I was so impressed. Like 5 years later, this is still amazing. And then the second one is like, the story's continuing. We've made some gameplay changes that have improved things. But I don't know. It's not that I expected them to do anything that drastically different anyway. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but the first one for me is still probably that little bit better. But at the end of it, it doesn't really matter, because for me, I kind of consider these all just like one sort of game anyway, because I played them all so close together. So sort of not all that necessary to rank them, but that's just how they've sort of fallen onto here. But yeah, so happy that I got to play the Spider-Man games this year after 5 years. And next year, as far as PlayStation games that I've missed, I've got to play God of War from 2018. 2018, yeah, I fell off of all of my PlayStation games. So I need to go back and play God of War and Ragnarok if I have enough time to play that one as well. But yeah, awesome stuff from PlayStation. I got to say, from the Insomniac leaks as well, over $300 million to make Spider-Man 2. So, geez Louise. Probably worth it, though. When you put it into context, like, what do I pay on PlayStation Network? To like $125 to buy it, and it costs like $300 million to make. Bloody bargain, mate. Bloody bargain. All right, we're in the top 10. So number 10 is Planet of Lana. And Planet of Lana, published by Thunderful Games. And this was something that as soon as I saw it, I knew nothing about it until it was either coming to or close to being on Game Pass. And I played it on the Asus ROG Ally, one sitting in bed, headphones on. Puzzle platformer, really sort of emphasis on sort of visual storytelling. Nothing is overtly said, but just the how the game starts. You're running through the village with your friend, and then like this, I don't know what you call them, but they're sort of alien spaceships or whatever come down from the sky, take everyone from the village, and then it's up to you to like progress through the environment to get to their hideout and eventually, save the day type of thing. But along the way, the puzzles are really smart, how you're able to utilize, just the environment around you. You get this little companion as well, very cute little cat-like companion, cat-monkey-like companion, don't know how to describe them, but you're able to use their abilities as well to bring in some different mechanics to the puzzles, which are really interesting. And it was a really special game in that way, and how it used stealth as well within the puzzles was really, really well done. But for me, the moment that really sort of captured me and made it a top 10 game for this year was, there was a moment about halfway through the game where there's like a musical moment where you're running from left to right. The camera zooms right out, shows the horizon, and this beautiful song plays. And it did something to me where I'm like, my eyes were watering when I was in bed playing this on the ROG Ally, and it was just a magical moment. Probably the second most magical moment of the year as far as playing video games goes. It was truly a moment that I will remember forever, even though I was just sitting in bed, just playing through the game. But it was a beautiful moment, and the soundtrack is on Apple Podcasts and I keep saying Apple Podcasts because I'm doing a podcast, I guess. Apple Music and Spotify, and beautiful soundtrack, just stunning. And the song that I'm referring to is called Horizons, and there's another song that is actually the credits version of Horizons, which is different enough to have me listen to both. And in my Apple Music wrap up for the year, Horizons was my second most played song of the year. I loved it. I played the song again and again. And Planet of Lana is coming to Nintendo Switch in April. There must be like a year exclusivity for Xbox because the game came out in April on Xbox. So yeah, April, check out Planet of Lana if Switch is your only platform. It's a tremendous game. It really is. And it's, quite short as well, 4 hours. But just a very, very special game to me this year. And when I was talking about games where I wish I ranked them higher, I wish I ranked Planet of Lana higher, because where I am now, this could have been I'm looking at it, a top 5 game, but it's at number 10. Like I could have really ranked it higher, but yeah, no, it's absolutely beautiful game. So yeah, please check it out when it comes to Switch. At number 9, we have Before Your Eyes, and this was a game I played on PlayStation VR 2. And obviously at number 9, this was a top game for games released in 2023 for me. And I put my list on Twitter, and somebody said, oh, look, that's a 2021 game. No, 2021 game. And look, yes, it is. It came to phones in 2021. It uses the camera just on your phone to track your eyes. So the premise of this game is like you're in a moment, you're going through highlights of this person's life, and from a baby to being older, and you're looking around, and if you blink, that moment's gone forever, and you move on to the next moment in this person's life. And the game incentivizes you to like hold your eyes open and not blink, and then like you can get more of the story and more of the narrative in that moment. But if you can literally spend like 1 second in one of these moments if your eyes blink. So you could play it on PC or mobile like that with a web camera or your phone's camera. But with PlayStation VR 2, you got the eye trackers right in the headset itself. So for me, this is a 2023 game, like a VR game. This is a VR game. This isn't a game you want to play on your phone with notifications coming up, or even on your PC, like with a webcam. Just immerse yourself in this world, and you're looking around and you're experiencing this person's life in the moment that it's happening. And then like your eyes blink and it's gone. And this was another game, kind of like Hindsight, where I went into it sort of, feeling really sort of introspective. And this was the game that hit when it came to that. And there's sort of like a story moment that absolutely broke me. Absolutely broke me. I was just destroyed. And as the game was wrapping up, like I literally bawled my eyes out to this game while wearing a VR headset. And I took it off and I had to like clean like around the rubber bit that goes around your eyes. It was just wet because I just cried my eyes out. This was an amazing game and a absolutely really special use of VR and the PlayStation VR 2, how it's got the eye tracking. It's like amazing use of that eye tracking, how it uses it. So yeah, while technically it could be a re-release for VR, 100%, this is a VR game to me. You can play it on your Netflix subscription on your phone. If that's your only option, obviously, if you don't have a VR headset, they're very expensive, so don't go and buy one just for this. But probably worth giving a go, regardless where you can play it. But VR, 100%, play it there if you can. Number 8 is High on Life. This was the first game I played this year, and played it through Xbox Game Pass. Played a fair bit on Game Pass actually, and I really enjoyed it. First person shooter from the minds of Rick and Morty. I'm not a Rick and Morty fan, but I find like I found the humor in this be quite funny, just dumb, crude, kind of just what I was looking for at the start of the year. Just something just funny, and I think the first person shooting mechanics work well enough. Look, honestly, it's no Call of Duty. It's no a lot of great examples of these first-person shooters. There's a lot of great ones to choose from. It's the most popular genre out there, but I really enjoyed the story. What I particularly liked about it was like it reminded me of Kid Icarus Uprising, and what I mean about this is like all of the weapons in this are characters, so they're able to talk to you as you're holding them in first person. You can see their face; they're facing you, and as they're talking to you, you can see their mouth move, their emotions. And I think that's what made me really like this game. Like, upgrading these weapons and using them for different abilities. You're swapping between them in the levels, but they're also talking to you as they're doing things, and they're always talking. And that's where the Kid Icarus Uprising comparisons come to for me, because while you're playing the game, there's always something being talked about, always something being progressed story-wise. You're not just like fighting a horde of enemies and it's just like, oh, I'll put a podcast on because nothing's happening. The characters are moving the story forward, even if it's like saying little dumb things to you and making you laugh. And that's where a lot of my enjoyment came from. I think the story was pretty good, and where the story ends up to is pretty funny. But I really enjoyed the weapons and how they talk to each other and all of that. I will say though, number 8 on my list, a little bit high. This was a game that, it was the first game that went onto the list, and it just sort of stayed high. I'm not quite sure why. Like Before Your Eyes and Planet of Lana, if I could, if I gave myself the ability, I would put those two easily above it. I'd put Spider-Man above it too. All the Spider-Man games. Yeah, no. High on Life definitely got the benefit of the doubt from the start of the year somehow. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. There's a bit of controversy as well that went on with Justin Roiland as well. He went to court for domestic violence, which is obviously an awful thing. But then it also came out that he was innocent of that. The women, for whatever reason, set him up. And I didn't hear many outlets or podcasts or whatever have you actually come out and take those news stories back. They reported on the fact that he's an awful person, but they never actually came out and reported that, hey, look, it was actually not true. So yeah, I just want to put that out there just for the game. At number 7, we got Horror Warriors Age of Calamity, and I played this on the lead up to Tears of the Kingdom, and it was great because when the game first initially came out in 2020, it was something that I wasn't in the mood for. I wasn't in the mood for playing through just a hack and slash Omega Force title game. Wasn't really in the mood for it. But on the lead up to Tears of the Kingdom, I wanted more story. I was just listening to heaps of Breath in the Wild story breakdowns, and I just wanted to live in that world again. So picking up this game from the backlog, which had at that stage been in there for 3 years was just a real hoot. And I actually kind of loved the sort of remix or different take on the story. How at the very start, you know, basically a portal opens up and goes to a different sort of version of that Hyrule. And then the story plays out different because of that one little change. How multiple people, you know, well, how nobody died. Like in Breath of the Wild, everyone's dead except for Link and Zelda. But in this other reality, you know, Link is able to make it to the Divine Beasts before, you know, before they perish in there, and how much of a difference it makes to the story. And I thought it was just really interesting, and how even if the story isn't canon or isn't canon on the same timeline Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom lives in, it was great just to get the lore and everything in there too, and just get a real action-based game. So really enjoyed it. And after finishing it, I'm like, oh, I've got to go back and play Hyrule Warriors, because with Hyrule Warriors, I felt the same. I felt like I really don't need a like, you know, just a Dynasty Warriors version of Zelda. But now after playing, Age of Calamity, and the previous year playing through Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, I'm definitely there now. So I want to go and check out some more of these Nintendo-based Warriors games. Hopefully we'll get a Tears of the Kingdom one, or another Fire Emblem one, or something else. I'll be there day one for another Warriors game, honestly. At number 6, we played The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, and another game that I've been just itching to get off my backlog. Nintendo Switch Online, perfect time to get into it, and I loved this game. And it's like one of my favorite genres. Is just like shorter, say 12-hour top-down Zelda games, whether it's like actual Zelda games or stuff like Blossom Tales or Trigger Witch. It's just such a great genre where you're able to do some exploration, collect things, do some side quests, but it doesn't take over your whole life. It's like a couple of weeks to get through just playing casually. And that's what The Minish Cap was for me. And also it evoked just like, you know, it's just a beautiful game with that Game Boy Advance pixel art style that I really, really enjoy. It's nostalgic in some ways, even though I don't have like massive nostalgia for The Minish Cap. But yeah, I enjoyed sort of the take on the Picori and becoming smaller and how that affected dungeons and all that. And playing it, I'm kind of like, I really want Capcom to do another Zelda game. But considering this was such a long time ago, it's like, that's not going to happen. But man, they did a good job with the Oracle games and the Minish Cap. At number 5, we got Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon. And I don't know, when I first saw this game, I really didn't think it's going to be so high on my list. I'm not a Bayonetta fan by any stretch of the imagination. I've tried a bit of 1, I tried a bit of 3, I tried a bit of 2. I've got them all actually. But it's something that just doesn't have the stickiness that I don't play it all that much. But I think for me, I just really enjoyed this game just with the gameplay mechanics of, controlling Cereza and Cheshire. That's right. It's a long time ago I played this too, back in March. But Cereza and Cheshire, having like Cheshire controlled with the right stick, Cereza with the left stick, and how that affects combat, as well as all the puzzles and that as you go throughout the game. I really enjoyed, the story as it progressed as well. And I think a lot of Bayonetta fans had sort of problems with the story. But for me, just being naive enough to not know what those problems are, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed how the story played out. I love the way it looks, the voice acting, the atmosphere around it, and just a really, really fantastic game. So it kind of kills me that this game didn't sell very well. It didn't it never would have set the world on fire, but I would like to see it be a little bit more successful. So yeah, Bayonetta Origins, number 5, really, really liked it. And, about my 5th most loved game of this year. That's pretty good. And honestly, I would rank it there. I think that's a good place for it. So top 5. Number 4, we got Atelier Ryza, Ever Darkness, and The Secret Hideout. This is a JRPG by Gus, published by Koei Tecmo. And I really was interested in this series as soon as I saw it. Just the idea of a a casual, sort of laid back JRPG where it's not about saving the world, it's not about any of this, but it's about a group of friends going on an adventure, and I guess the story of self discovery as well, which I found really, really impactful. And I bought this game when it came to Switch in 2019. And, was it 19? Might have been 20. Anyway, a while. And it got a sequel, and it was getting a sequel in 2023. So I'm like, all right, need to play through the first couple of games so I can get to the third game. And I did buy the game again on PlayStation 5. So I played it on PlayStation 5 just because I just love the art style that much. I don't want it to look blurry or fuzzy. I want it to be like sharp and sheen like it was on the PlayStation version. So I played it there and absolutely love the whole mechanics of the Atelier series now that I've played Ryza. And what sort of makes this RPG series different to other JRPGs is that it very much requires you to gather your ingredients to make all your weapons, all your items for all your party. And it sort of adds like a bit of a personal touch, how like everything is handmade by you. And I quite enjoyed that. And but I think the thing I enjoyed the most was the story, how it is like, some young kids or teenagers sort of just being sick of being stuck on this island, going on their own adventure. And at the end, they have like a real sort of, they really sort of discover who they are and what they want to do. And I just found the game really beautiful and heartwarming in that way. And especially Ryza, the main character. And I found it just weirdly relatable in some ways. Like Ryza, she is the only child of a farmer, and she sort of longs for adventure and doing something else. And in some ways, I don't know, it sort of resonated with me too. Like, farming isn't necessarily like my love, my life, whatever. And I don't know, I sort of resonated with her story and where she ended up. But what I really liked as well is like the actual playing of the game. So like the actual battle mechanics as well. It's not turn based, but it's it's like turn based action. So like you're actually like waiting for your turn, and you got like a little graph also a little bar that you're waiting for to fill up, and you can use your moves, use your items, all of that, and you're building up points throughout the actual battle itself to make the time between attacks less. You can use super moves, all of that. It was really quite excellent. And looking back on it, with the advancements the second game made to the battle system, it looks pretty bare bones, and they improved it so much in the second and definitely in the third game. But it was a great start, and I absolutely love the Atelier series after playing this game. And after finishing that game, I went straight on to number 2, Atelier Ryza 2, Lost Legends and the Secret Fairy. This is my third favorite game of the year. And this game took everything that the first game did, but made it better. The graphics, look a lot sharper. The all of the battle mechanics are kind of overhauled, like majorly, but the same sort of premise. How it all just flows better, and like the battles look better, and it's just like it's a lot more fun to actually engage in the combat. And the story for me personally, for the second game, I prefer the story to the first game, but that's only because of how it resonated with me. With the second game, you are progressing through like these dungeons. You're looking for these like certain items that you progress the story with, and like you're looking for like I guess like the secrets, like who is like your companion, which I guess is the Secret Fairy. But yeah, an absolutely fantastic JRPG series, and I probably would have number 3. I haven't finished it, that's why it's not on the list. But number 3 would probably be behind number 2. And that's purely because like number 3 at the moment, it just seems like the story that I've done so far is just, it's felt like a little bit slow, a little bit more padding. And I'm like 19 hours into the third game. Whereas I feel like the first 2 games, it was like the story got going a lot more quickly than that. But not saying that I don't enjoy the third game, but yeah, definitely enjoy that one better. And number 2. So we've got the final 2. Can you guess what these might be? Number one might be a bit more obvious after I say this, but number two is Super Mario Brothers Wonder. And it's been years since we've had a brand new 2D Mario game, and I'm so happy that Nintendo have came out and made such a fantastic Mario title. And it's been a long time since we've had like just a main, I guess, Mario game, whether it's 2D or 3D. Since Mario Odyssey, we haven't had like really like a proper Mario game. You go like Mario Maker, Mario this, Mario that. But when it comes to like the platformers, it's been a long time. So it's just nice to get one of them in general. But even like the 2D, you're going back to New Super Mario Brothers U, which was, over 10 years ago at this point. And while we did get the deluxe version of that, it's just, it doesn't count. But Mario Wonder had an opportunity to try it at PAX. And when I tried it at PAX, I'm like, I cannot wait. The play's going to be a lot of fun, but just playing like the first world or so, or first 3 levels, it's Mario. It's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. But actually getting your hands on it and being able to experience everything the game has to offer was just absolutely wonderful. Like how you're like the creativity in every single level with like the Wonder Seeds and the Wonder Flowers was just really eye-opening. And while there were a couple of instances where Super Mario Brothers Wonder did like repeat sort of uses of like Wonder Seed ideas, it was because they had more to sort of flesh out. It was never because they were strapped for ideas. So there was plenty of stuff to do in this game. And personally for me, why it's at number 2 is just because, it came out in October, a busy time of year. But it's a game on Switch where I can take it with me and I can easily play a level or two in between lunch breaks and all that type of thing when I'm busy. So it just fit into my life really well, and it really sort of gave me something to look forward to and a bit of downtime, even though like during the day when I was busy, it wasn't like a JRPG where I'm like, oh, well, I'm not going to pick it up for 2 minutes. It wasn't like any of the other games I played this year. It was just like a fantastic game to pick up, and especially when I was going for the 100% completion, I was able to like go through some levels. Oh, look, I'm missing a Wonder Seed here. I'll do that level quickly, and then I'd get it, and I lock the switch and put it back down. And yeah, it was just an absolutely fantastic game, and like sort of the more challenging content in it as well was a lot of fun to do, and it actually did push my I guess Mario platforming skills to like the right amount where it wasn't too much. It wasn't like a level in Super Mario Brothers Maker 2 where I'm like, oh my God, I've got no chance of ever doing this. But it pushed me like just enough to where like the final level of the game to complete the whole thing, I would have done like 100 lives. So it was a good thing I had that the ability just to farm lives. That was handy in this game. But a phenomenal game. It really was a return to form for 2D Mario. And in some ways, like the only negative thing I've got to say about the game is the bosses. I don't understand why they just reused Bowser Jr. for like bosses in this game. But that is a nitpick at this point. It's not like if they had like unique bosses that the game would have just been so much better and it would have fixed all the problems I have with the game. It's just like something like, why do they keep reusing like that factory boss fight and the Bowser Jr. boss fight? I don't know why. Like they have the creativity to not do that, so I don't know. But yeah, wonderful game. And actually I wanted to sit down and do like a full breakdown of Mario Wonder because the last episode I recorded of this podcast was like the day before Mario Wonder came out, and I actually sat down to like record Mario Wonder review, and I just couldn't get it out. I was just so out of the loop when it came to podcasting. I'm like, ugh. So that's sort of what delayed me a little bit to record another episode. But yeah, I loved Mario Wonder, and I'll be talking about it a lot more as time goes on. And number 1, it will be no surprise to anybody who who follows what games come out on Nintendo Switch or what my tastes are, but there's no way this would have ever have gotten knocked off my number 1 spot. And there's a lot of games that could have been number 1 or number 2 or number 3 or in the top 5 easily. Just to name a few, Final Fantasy 16, played a couple of hours with, didn't get it finished. Pikmin 4, I started like barely, but not really. Sea of Stars, a game that I started recently, and I think that game could honestly be like a top 5 game for me this year. So there's games that I missed, and I will be getting to hopefully this year in 2024. But there's so many that I missed, and there's a few more that I wanted to pick up. Like I picked up Baldur's Gate on Steam, so I'll play through at least enough to work out whether I like it or not. That might have been a game that might have hooked me and might have knocked this game off its perch. But I think realistically, just with the build up to this game, which is, it's pretty obvious. It's The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. It's my favorite game of this year. And honestly, it's probably my favorite game of all time at this point. I really did love this game. And, it comes with a lot of things. It comes with a history of, Breath of the Wild, which just is an amazing game, which had an amazing just lead up to it. It brought Nintendo back to where they are now, like from the Wii U to one of the strongest position they've ever been in as far as being a console maker or a games producer. And now the sequel to that, and they've taken that game and just broken it open and made it one of the most incredible experiences of the year that is running on hardware that it fits in your pocket, and you can go anywhere and play it anywhere for 4 hours without it going flat. And that's just something that, there's plenty of other handhelds out there that run on Windows or Steam Deck or whatever. But Switch is still the only sort of experience that does that, even though it's very old in the tooth now. This game proved that it doesn't necessarily rely on the hardware that you're making it on, but it comes down to the minds, the technical know-how, the game design, and everything else that this game fit into it that makes it really, really special, and just an amazing sort of follow-up to one of the best games ever made, which is amazing. And I say it's my favorite Zelda game. I'm going to say it's my favorite game, but I'm not sure. That will fluctuate depending on what day you ask me. But I think which makes me know I really love it was with Breath of the Wild. I never said it was my favorite Zelda game. I'm like, it could be, but also like Twilight Princess. These games are very different in what they have to offer. Twilight Princess and Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, and even Skyward Sword. They offer more linear experiences, where like you have obviously you got your order, you do your things in, you got your puzzles, your dungeons, all that layout. A story progression that makes sense in a linear fashion. But Breath of the Wild, it's very much like, look, we're changing that so you can have the freedom of the open world. But with Tears of the Kingdom, they brought a little bit of that back while also keeping what made Breath of the Wild special, where like the memories now through like the teardrops you find throughout the world, it makes sense why they're out of order, why they're scattered around. Especially when you progress further in the game, it makes even more sense. But the idea of Zelda getting thrown back in time, it sort of makes sense that you're sort of finding out where Zelda is. You're learning about where she is, what she's done in the past, because she went back that far, and things have already happened, I guess, since she went back, because she's been back there for a little while. But in Breath of the Wild, where you're just finding out random bits here and there for sort of no reason, and a lot of people didn't discover or understand the story that was told in that game, rightfully so. I sort of only learned because of fantastic content creators like Zeltech on YouTube, to be honest with you, and playing through Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity sort of pieces together some of that stuff a little bit better than the game does. Because in Breath of the Wild, you probably won't even play it, but in Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like it's a really important aspect of the game to actually make sure you find out what those were. And getting back to the temples, while the temples weren't exactly what people wanted, I feel like it was a great sort of middle ground to what you would expect from a game like Ocarina of Time, a temple in that game, and mixed with what Breath of the Wild had to offer. Because in this game, you cannot get a brand new item. They're not going to give you a new item. The whole thing of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild was that you have all your tools, and it's up to you how you use them and how you use them in the overworld, and that no place is off limits. You can climb anything, you can do anything. So they can't offer you like a brand new item that you get back to the overworld and that you can access a different area. Kind of like, I guess like the spinner in Twilight Princess, where you get to like, oh look, there's a little groove in the wall. I can use it there now. Yeah, they can't do that in this game where it unlocks more stuff in the temple, but it did provide like the boss battles. It did provide all of that you love from your more classic 3D Zelda games, and I just fell in love with the game. Just going through, getting my heart pieces. That was the biggest order of the game for me. It's just like getting my ass kicked at the start, just like getting one-shotted by by bosses, and I'm like, all right, well, not bosses, just enemies in the overworld. And I said to myself, all right, I need to do some shrines, and I spent like hours doing shrines, just picking them out, going from one to one, doing side quests and that along the way, exploring, finding wells and caves, and just really immersing myself in the world as I'm going through all of this stuff. And it was so much fun. And with like the tears and uncovering Zelda's story, there was a moment which I really want to talk about in a spoiler fashion, but spoiler free here. There was in my multiple sessions of playing until 3 o'clock at night. I'm like looking at the clock. All right, I've got 10 minutes. All right, I'm gonna do this teardrop, this memory, and then we'll wrap it up. I'll go to bed. And I watch it, and my jaw just drops, and I'm like, oh my God. And I don't end up going to bed for another hour. And when I went to bed, I was just wide awake, just like thinking about what happened. It was just amazing. It's my favorite just moment of 2023 playing games. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I wish I could just, I could relive that. It was just so awesome. And how the story wraps up, the final encounter is just mesmerizing. It's amazing. It's just so impressive. When I was fighting it, I stood up. I'm like, whoa! And I'm playing the game, stood up with the Pro controller and playing it that way. It was just a really special game. It's my favorite Zelda game. I love it so much. And I guess just personally, just as far as what I think of the game, when it comes to playing games, it's all about our experiences and where we are in our life when we play them, and that's no exception for this game. This came this came after years of hype, just working out where the story is going to go and all that, and the game finally came out. But it came out around at a time for me when, my mum was getting treatment for breast cancer. I was alone on the farm, managing that while my parents were in the city getting treatment for that. And while it was a very hard time this year for me, Zelda really kept me in a good place, just mentally, to be able to do what I need to on the farm, to keep that running, to be there for my wife and my son and all of that. And it's a game I'm just, in that respect, very thankful for that, we play a lot of games. I played a lot of games this year, some that stuck with me, some that, didn't, and I forgot. I forgot some moments of. But Zelda is one for me I will never forget because of the amazing things the developers, the designers, and everyone was able to fit into that game, the storytellers and how the game worked together, but also how all of that was there for me when I needed it most, when I really needed something to lift me up. And Zelda was just like, Tears of the Kingdom was a game that I was in a hole, and it sort of just put its hand down to me and said, look, we're here for you in some ways. I know that sounds lame. I know that sounds whatever, but I know we all have games like that in our lives. And for me, that was Tears of the Kingdom. And that's why, there's criticisms where it's like, the controls get a little bit convoluted sometimes. You got to hold in the trigger and a bumper and a up on the D-pad to throw an item. It's like Jesus Christ. There's not enough buttons on this controller to do some of the things the game has here to asked you to do, and sometimes using the Ultra hand as well to like move items around. It's like, it's a little bit finicky sometimes, but you know, after spending hours with the game, you get used to it, and it is what it is. And it's interesting because like I got all these great things to say about the game, but I only just brought up Ultra Hand, and that's because like for me, I really enjoyed Ultra Hand. It was great, sort of experimenting with stuff, but I never built things like people do online, where you say like these contraptions or all these automated mechs to go and take down bases. I never did anything like that. I just made very basic stuff and all of that. But yeah, Tears of the Kingdom just lived up to the hype and doubled it for me. It's one of my favorite games ever, if not my favorite. I'm starting to make a top 25 list of all time for me. And for me, my top 25 or top 3 for all time, I don't know, it's between Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Last of Us Part 2, or Mario Galaxy, Pokemon Emerald. Top 4. So yeah, that's probably like my top 4. So yeah, I don't know. Man. Last of Us Part 2 Remastered comes out this month. Maybe I'll be going back to that. I'm trying to work out whether that's in a spot there. But I think for me, just the exploration of like a Zelda game is just more up my alley than, you know, any of these other games. I'm not quite sure, but something I've got to think about over the next year. But definitely after thinking about it after 6 months, it's still held up there in my mind. It's just been like, it's one of my favorite games of all time, and I can't wait for another Zelda game in another 6 years. So yeah, that was my, I guess, top 42 of my 42 games when I finished this year. And going forward for this year, I want to focus on, like, next episode or so, I want to talk about, like, you know, how to tackle your backlog and sort of some planning ideas I want to tackle in the next year as well. Really looking forward to doing all that. There's so much in my backlog I want to sort of get into because I haven't got around to playing it yet, much like I, you know, tackled a lot of stuff last year. But yeah, been a great year so far, and I'd love to hear what some of your favorite games for the year were as well. Whether it was something from your backlog or a brand new game as well. Love to hear what you thought. But as you might hear, I'm losing my voice, so I haven't podcasted in a long time, so I'm not used to talking. I'm used to just sitting there in silence, brewing in my emotions. No, that's not true. Actually, that is a little bit true. But I'm going to wrap it up there. Everybody, thank you very much for listening to this episode of The House of Mario. Be sure to go into the Discord. Tell me what your favorite games were. Let me know what you thought of the show, what you'd like to see in the future. And this year, another New Year's resolution for me is also to actually record and post episodes. So I have that to look forward to as well. But until next time, the doors to the House of Mario, they're closed. I'll catch you later.
The House of Mario, a Nintendo podcast, is recorded in the southeast of South Australia. It is produced by me, Drew Agnew, and is supported by my kind and generous housemates at patreon.com/iDrewby. Call in for my behind-the-scenes podcast, secret recordings, and heaps good. The South Aussie take on a conversational show with my good friend Josh of Nintendvania. A huge shout out to the legends who support me at the iDrewby Patreon Mega Feed tier or higher on Patreon, including Brendan Myers, Oliver Chaston, Samuel Hay, DJ, and Lemonade. Let's continue to make passionate Nintendo content as we climb the stairs to 300. Thank you.